Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Garden Variety Knits. I'm Kelsey and this is just going to be another video where I talk through all of the knitting that I've been doing recently and what I'm planning to do next. It's going to be a little bit packed today, so I'm going to try to be somewhat efficient, but I do have a lot to say about all of the things that I'm going to be showing. If you're new, by the way, welcome, and I'm Kelsey and I'm from New Zealand originally, but I live in Switzerland at the moment and I've been knitting probably about as long as I've been in Switzerland, which is a couple of years. More seriously, I could knit before that, but it wasn't like, didn't occupy the space in my life that it does now. If you are watching knitting videos on YouTube, I'm sure that you are in a similar spot to me. And if you're returning, it's really nice to see you again, and I hope that you enjoy today's video. What we're going to be chatting about today, I have, depending how you count, 4 finished objects maybe, and a couple of works in progress. I don't have tons in the way of plans. We'll see. We'll see how things go. And I've also had a complete mix of success and failure. So I'll talk you through all of my thoughts there as well. Okay, so let's start with probably the biggest flop, and this is also the thing that was on my needles the longest, kind of chronologically. I started it the longest ago. So this is the Mio Mighty, and it's by Park Williams, and I knitted up in Drops Belle, which is a DK weight yarn, which is like cotton, viscose and linen. I think this is the color Natural. I think this color, to me, it reads really light kind of apricot, more so than white. Like it actually is so off-white that it kind of, to me, ventures into the realm of pastel. I have so many thoughts about this. I think let's start with, I'll put in my try-on footage and I can tell you the things that I'm unhappy about in the finished object. And they basically boil down to, I think I made this with too much negative ease, which is kind of my fault. The final measurements at the moment, it's got 13 centimeters of negative ease on me. And I think that the pattern only intends from 0 to 10 centimeters of negative ease. And then the other issue is that I find the fit across the shoulders a little bit weird. I did add my own shoulder increases to kind of go from the negative ease body out to my shoulder measurements. But on top of that, I accidentally knit both sleeves too short, and I fixed one a little, but I ran out of yarn, so it's still not at the intended pattern length. And I did that because I misread a measurement for 2.5 inches as 2.5 centimeters, which is a classic mistake. And I don't know, maybe I'll just show exactly the clip in the video, but the really small cap sleeve, as well as looking a bit funny, it doesn't do its job of keeping like the fabric on my shoulder down. So if I like lift my arms, it kind of ends up riding up and then creating this kind of bump on my shoulder. So it's not really something I can live with. And I could increase both sleeve lengths, but I ran out of yarn. I was playing yarn chicken towards the end as well. And I actually already shortened the body once because it was actually a bit long compared to the cropped length I wanted. But I think if I shortened it all the way that I would need to make both sleeves long enough, it would probably get in the realm of like a micro crop. Not micro. Some people wear very cropped garments, but just shorter than I would like. And I don't like the fabric enough to do any more work on this, I think. So this is knit on 4mm needles. The pattern actually calls for 3.75, and it's meant to be quite a dense gauge, which, I don't know, just in this light colored yarn, I wasn't loving it. It just doesn't look that good, especially with the amount of negative ease that I have, I think. So maybe it would look better if it was 0 ease or a little bit of positive ease so it wasn't stretched out, but I find that when it's stretched out with this light colored thick yarn, it kind of gets a bit gappy, but it's very, like, I don't know, I guess because it's thicker yarn, it looks more inconsistent to the eye, like it's not like, it doesn't all blend together. You can kind of see the individual stitches and holes, and I don't really like that. Yeah, the try on footage, I don't know, at least on my little screen that I was watching it back on, it looks better in the footage than it does in person. So maybe you won't quite understand my disappointment in this. But yeah, I think that the combination of DK weight plant yarn with like tight gauge and lots of negative ease has not worked out. I also have this top here, which is just a little, I thrifted it, like little baby tee that I actually really like wearing. Definitely fast fashion. But anyway, I really like the way this fits, and I'll actually insert a little bit of try on footage of that, although I know it's not knitting. But I did that because I took a picture of them like flat laid next to each other, and the measurements are really quite similar. This one has a pinch more ease, like it's a bit wider, but I don't know, they I mean, they like, I like the fit of this, but in such a thicker fabric, it really doesn't work as well for me. So anyway, I guess that's just, I'm trying to justify why I knit an entire t-shirt before deciding that I don't like it and that it doesn't fit the way I want it to. And it's because I had basis to believe that it could fit more nicely because this one is nice on me. I guess that's my only defense. So I think I'll just quickly run through what kind of the journey was with this. Yeah, I guess I got sick of this in the end because I had already done quite a lot of work on it. So, I mean, if you are a loyal viewer, you'll remember that when I started this on holiday, I didn't gauge swatch and I started it way too big. And then I had to restart the whole thing. Once I split for the front and back at the sleeve, at the underarm, I also knit to pattern and joined at the shoulders, and then tried it on and concluded that that would leave quite big, like deep armholes that I didn't necessarily think was going to work with the sleeves. I don't know, it was just too deep, I think, like because the sleeves were meant to kind of sit, like they weren't meant to have a ton of positive ease. It just felt like it wasn't right, especially since the top was negative ease on me. So I ended up undoing my bind off and then frogging like a few rows on the back panel, which was easy, but on the front I had to frog all the way like back under the neckline shaping, then frog my few rows and then redo the neckline shaping just like in pattern. And that was kind of annoying, especially since, you know, it just left me with 2 extra ends to weave in. The sleeves are shaped with short row shaping, and I really can't comment on like how they will sit in the normal pattern because 1, I had changed the shape of the armhole with some increases for the shoulders, and 2, I just didn't knit them long enough, as I mentioned. I also ran out of yarn like halfway through the second tiny sleeve that I was accidentally knitting, and I had to like cut the bottom, frog back, because it's bottom up, I had to like pull through the yarn all the way around where I cut, and then I could frog back the last strip that I took off the bottom, but I needed to bind off again as well. And also because I had like frogged that bit of the front and the back panel, I had to kind of these lengths of yarn, and I just ended up with tons of ends to weave in. And once I had thought I'd finished my sleeves, I did all my like ends weaving in. I tried to be really good about it. Because it's DK yarn, I only kind of fully duplicate stitched a little bit in places where I'd joined a new ball, and then I split the yarn in half and like separately wove in each half strand to kind of make sure that I didn't get really double thickness fabric in too many places. So I was trying to be very like, I don't know, perfectionist about this. And then when I like blocked it and just tried it on, and first of all with the TD sleeves, it just sat so wrong. So that was a disappointment. And then when I realized my mistake, I kind of just started looking more critically at the fabric and how it sat on my body, and I was like, I just don't think I'm gonna wear this even if the sleeves look a lot better when they're knit to the correct length, especially if it means taking yarn off the bottom. Of course, my other option is I could always buy another ball of yarn, but I'm just so unconvinced by this whole project that I don't think I'm gonna do either of these things. So a bit of a disappointment. I think also I am really realizing that even in like summer yarns, a DK weight knit fabric in the summer is just not nice. Like, it is scorching today, and I don't think I'm gonna ever wear a DK weight t-shirt in hot weather. And I mean, sure, we've got spring and autumn, but again, I just don't love it enough. So I think that what I'm learning is that my summer knits should probably most of the time be sleeveless. It's just what I gravitate to, and I find it the most comfortable, and it's more fun to knit because, I don't know, it's a little bit easier or quicker. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to avoid anything, but I definitely don't want to knit things that I don't like wear. But yeah, anyway, it's semi-cute. Like, it definitely has potential. Yeah, and then in terms of ways to reuse the yarn, I don't think I'll do it immediately because you know, it's always a bit, it stings a bit to undo something immediately after you were kind of working on creating it. But I can imagine maybe turning this into a Tulsa tank, which I bought the pattern a couple weeks ago, still haven't knit it. But yeah, a DK Tulsa tank could probably work for me. Maybe the square neck profile silhouette version. And yeah, I guess my other options is I was thinking something at a looser gauge and maybe with eyelets or something would be quite cute. And then finally, I'm not totally sure about this, but Le Poule has a tank top that has like it's cropped. I'll put a picture in, and it has this little frill around the bottom. I don't know if it would actually feel good to wear something that's that loose and that cropped. It feels like the sort of thing that maybe only looks good photographed from like one angle. Anyway, it caught my eye because it's recommended to use drop spell for that one. But honestly, I think, yeah, I'm not totally sure what this will become. But yeah, something with positive ease, I think, something with a looser gauge, and probably something that's intended to be kind of lacy or somewhat see-through. We'll see. Yeah, so that's kind of disappointment number one, but I'm gonna give you a bit of whiplash because we're gonna follow that up with something that I'm incredibly happy with. So yeah, I've been on a roller coaster, you're gonna be on a roller coaster, let's go. Okay, so this here is the Leela top by Caidree with some modifications. I knit this in BC Garn Lino, which is 100% linen fingering weight, and I'll put in a picture of it in the ball, but it really feels like twine when you get it. It's like, it looks like twine, it feels like twine, but it's not. And you know, it does soften up. This isn't even I bought it at my local yarn store and they had a sample in this yarn, which I think they had to because people just don't believe the transformation that it'll have with like a few washes. So this is already softer, but I can tell that it like from that sample, I'm expecting it to soften up significantly more. I'll insert some footage, but this has quite a few modifications. It is heavily inspired by Maya from the Millets and Tinks channel because she test knit this pattern and she recommended, or like she did a few mods and had some recommendations for things that she thought improved it. And so I followed almost all of those, plus I added some of my own. I guess the main mods from her is that I added an extra repeat on the back to just raise the height of the back, and then also she omitted the bottom ribbing and did a bind off just like 1 or 2 rows after the last garter kind of detail, which is what I did as well. But then on top of those modifications, I also modified the shape of the front and back kind of panels at the top. So to make the modified neckline shape, I cast on like 70% the number of recommended stitches in the pattern. I was knitting the size 3 and I ended up downsizing to 3mm needles, which again, I think similarly to in my Crumpet Camisole, I think that working with 100% linen without processing it, it's just a bit stiffer, and I find that that means I end up with a looser gauge. That's my theory. Anyway, so I cast on fewer stitches and then I evenly increased out to the point in the top where I would be doing the underarm shaping. For me, I think that worked out too. I was increasing every 4 rows, and then at the underarm shaping in the pattern you change to increasing every like 2 rows or something like that. So I just got like this shape. And then on the back where I had that extra repeat, I ended up actually just knitting straight for that first repeat so that I didn't have to modify my maths, which I think looks fine. And yeah, I actually quite like this neckline. I was a little bit unsure about the kind of wider boat neck. If you caught my latest pattern roundup, you'll know that me and boat necks are not the greatest of friends. So yeah, I quite like the kind of slightly more halter neck, like square neck look. As well, and it just feels really easy, breezy. Like, I'm really loving this top. One of the other changes that I made is that it's got I-cord that is worked alongside just as the selvage. In the pattern you're meant to do it where you like slip all 4 I-cord stitches like on one side of the fabric, but I ended up rearranging my stitches after a couple of rows so that I could do it as double knitting, so it was like knit slip, which I think topologically, or like, I think it's equivalent. It's just that instead of one long float, you end up with like a couple shorter floats and you're double knitting. And to me, it was easier to keep it consistent on both sides of the top. At the bottom, so originally I knit this 2 repeats longer, but I have written down actually, this, again, I think because of the kind of stiffness of the yarn or like wiriness before it was blocked, the stitches were way wider and shorter. So it actually went from like 103 centimeters circumference before blocking to 84 centimeters, and the size is meant to be 90. So it went from like 13 centimeters too big to 6 centimeters too small in circumference, and it lengthened so much. I don't know if I have any pictures. If I do, if I find one, I'll insert it, but it wasn't so much. It was probably the recommended length, but I wanted it cropped. So I had to frog the last couple of repeats. And the first time I bound off, I used the half hitch sewn bind off, I think it's called, that Maya had recommended. But even having downsized my needles a little bit for the last garter detail, another thing that Maya recommended, my half hitch bind off just turned out too, like, it flared a little, and even after I went back and like manually pulled through some slack, and it still wasn't great. And so once I undid all of that and I was doing another bind off, I this time chose to do an Icelandic bind off, which I think looks pretty good, like in the kind of with the garter detail, and even just on the stockinette section, I think it looks fine. I don't know if that's a good demonstration. And then the final modification that I made is that I added a bust short row shaping to the front. And again, because of the massive change in proportions when it blocked, this ended up like 1 repeat too low, and I really wish I'd done it. I'd considered doing it like 1 repeat earlier, but I think on balance I was more worried about it sitting above my bust than I was about it sitting below my bust, because it felt like it would be more visible if it was kind of too high. It doesn't really matter where I positioned it. It could have gone at the bottom hem, because all it was doing is lengthening that hem so that it doesn't have the effect where, because of the extra distance it travels over my bust, it kind of rides up at the front. So it's not really so much about shaping the bust area as just like changing that hemline. So just quickly, I'll try to outline how I did the short row shaping. I'll also try to put a description of this in my Ravelry project for reference, which will also be linked below, along with Maya's Ravelry project, which has her mods listed. But yeah, basically you can see here the effect of the short row shaping. So I've got like the garter detail kind of comes together, but in the middle it's not visible. But the basic principle is that I did the same number of short rows as there are in one repeat of this pattern. So there's one extra repeat in the front section under the arms than there is in the back. And I tried to do it in a way that disrupted the pattern as little as possible. I mean, it was a little bit detailed, but essentially I started the shaping, I think 2 rows before the garter detail. And I went all the way to the underarm halfway mark. And then I started doing German short rows, and I ended up with my German short rows, I think 2 stitches apart. So it would be like a German short row stitch, a normal stitch, a German short row stitch. Essentially, it meant that after the 4 rows of doing this garter detail, I still wasn't close enough in that I couldn't knit all the way across the garter detail, if that makes any sense. And then I just kept doing German short rows all the way through the stockinette section of the repeat, and then I resolved them all in one stockinette round. So as I mentioned, I knit size 3. I'm not sure that the same technique would have as seamless a look in size 2 or in size 1. You could always try starting the German short rows a little bit closer to the back so that you've got a little bit more stockinette to play with. And then for the larger, if you wanted to do more than one garter repeat of short row shaping, I would probably say that you would want to do 1 repeat, resolve the whole thing, and then do a second one. So rather than just going shorter and shorter, you kind of have 2 German short row wedges. Feel free to ask me any questions if that doesn't make sense. But yeah, hopefully my description in my Ravelry project, which I have yet to write, will also help. The other thing I wanted to say is that so Maya's suggestion to add an extra repeat on the back was definitely good, and you can see in the try-on footage that it sits well. I do think that because of the way I made it closer in, it probably also would have been fine if it sat further down the back, because it's kind of just a little bit more tank toppy. It doesn't need that. If it was the boat neckline, I do think it matters if it sags down the back more, but I think that with this little square one, it actually wouldn't have made me unhappy. But I'm also not mad that I did it. Okay, yeah, and then in terms of just the yarn, this fabric is so breezy and nice to wear. It is probably the tiniest bit sheer. I'm really hoping that the stitches kind of plump up a bit more as it gets softer and washes more. That's kind of the plan, but that's alright. It gives hippie vibes. It really does feel like it's not hemp, it's linen, but it feels like I'm wearing hemp, just kind of from the color and the cut. It feels very, I don't know, natural. Yeah, I think that this is possibly my favorite thing I've ever knitted, which is kind of wild, and it's pretty plain, so it makes me really think. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be boring, but I definitely feel like I'm going to try and lean into making a few really beautiful staples along with the kind of slightly more interesting knits, because I do think that having things that I just get to wear and love is going to be awesome. So yeah, I'm also kind of planning some plain stockinette sort of cardigan type things come autumn, so hopefully that's not going to bore people too much. Okay, so the next one I can run through pretty quickly because most of the details are in episode 6, which I think is my last kind of standard video. But I finished this little kind of bandeau top thing that I've been knitting. So this is self-drafted. The main pattern work I had to do was working out how the rate of increase along these kind of vertical bust darts that I put in, and then I did a little bit of decreasing under the underarm, and yeah, just making sure that it kind of is the right length and the right circumference, you know, just standard measurement stuff. But I did have a bit of flexibility because I put in these eyelets to have a kind of lace up detail on the back, which meant that I didn't need to get it perfect because I could lace it up tighter or looser in various parts. And so the last time I showed this, I think I had done almost all of it. And since then, all I've done is I added a folded hem at the top, and I actually threaded this ribbon through that hem as well, so that I could kind of tighten all the way around with the ribbon. I'm not totally sure whether that's better than letting the kind of ribbon at the back tighten in the kind of elastic fabric of the knitting. And actually the eyelet at the back is a little bit below, so it also has the purpose of it keeps this top hem neatly against my back, whereas if I just started lacing at the eyelets, I think it would kind of flare a little bit funnily. So I think it's good how it is. I'll insert some footage of me wearing this. I have mentioned previously, I don't know if strapless tops are for me. I always feel like there's just so much like torso above the top, but I looked up some pictures and stuff online of people wearing like strapless bandeau tops, and it's just how it looks. So I think that is the aesthetic. It's not for everyone. Maybe it's not for me, but I am looking forward to wearing this. Spoilers for my upcoming plans, but I'm intending to sew some pants, and I'm really hoping that like some nice kind of billowy pants with a bandeau top is going to be quite cute. So I at least have one outfit that I want to pair this in. Yeah, that's basically everything I have to say about this. If you want to know more, I would go back and watch the last video because I talk through how I made it and kind of all the details there. Cool. It's fun to have that finished. I don't know how much wear it's gonna get. Okay, and then finally in my little finished objects tour, I just wanted to briefly mention my Crumpet Camisole again. So this is a test knit for Park Williams, or Park and Knit, and I have knit it up in Rerum Natura's Antigone, which is 100% linen sport weight yarn. And it's mega cute still. Not that hasn't changed, but I wanted to mention it because I undid the like cups and straps of one side, and you might be able to see now the front panel is higher than the back panel, because what I did is I offset the armhole shaping from the neckline shaping, and I'll add instructions of how I did that in my Ravelry project because it's really quite easy and I think it would work for all sizes. But yeah, essentially I just worked the armhole shaping while continuing to work in pattern across the front. And then I worked the shaping for the neckline while just doing straight edges on the strap side, like on the arm side. And it just gave a little bit more height in the front, and I'll insert some footage, but basically I had wanted to wear this with like a bandeau style bra, and I just wanted it to have a bit more coverage on the front so that it wasn't going to dip below kind of anything I wanted to wear under it. Again, this was mostly just a story of me being patient because it meant I had to just like weave in, like I had to unweave a bunch of ends that I'd woven in, and then I had to weave in more ends because I ended up, you know, joining more yarn, and then I ended up making the straps too short. I don't know how, I assumed that I wanted it to be symmetric with the back in terms of the total number of repeats from the bottom hem all the way to the top of the strap. I can't remember if that's how it had been before I modded it, but either way it ended up too short and the armholes were too tight, and I think part of it might have also been that by adding this extra fabric in the middle on the neck, it kind of pulled in a little more, and so I needed a little bit more strap length. But yeah, long story short, I ended up like binding off and weaving in the ends on the straps, and then I ended up undoing that and lengthening the straps again which involved joining new yarn for only like a couple repeats. But just very frustrating, like, and this is, you know, this is one of the things about working with summer, like non-wool fibers, is that you can't split splice. Like, you're gonna, if you want to add more yarn, you have to weave in like 4 more ends. It's really, yeah, kind of frustrating. But in the end, I made myself do it, and I think this is actually better now than it was before, and I think I will wear it more, and so, you know, that's just a win. Once I had knit that new repeat, I just kind of chucked it in the washing machine, and I'll admit I didn't really pin it out when I blocked it, I just kind of hung it up. So I think I might do it with pinning it out, because I do think that this little lace repeat just looks a little bit more kind of squashed than the rest of it. Yeah, so that's kind of the last thing I want to do with this, but probably just the next time I wash it. Yeah. Still cute. I think the pattern's out quite soon now, so keep an eye out on Park Williams' kind of Instagram or Ravelry, and you should be able to make yourself one soon if you're interested. Okay, so next up we can have a little tour through my whips. If you didn't catch it, I would recommend going and having a look at my most recent video, which is a pattern roundup, because my first whip is something that I'm making with this Knitting for Olive pure silk. And I did quite a lot of thinking about what I wanted to make, and so I decided to make a whole video about it, and I won't relitigate that. But what I've cast on is the Tombo tee by Florence Miller, or Handmade by Florence. And it's a little scrunched up, but so far it looks like this. It starts off knitting flat and then you join in the round. And I first just wanted to check that I could get it over my head if I added an I-cord, which I could. I'm a little bit worried that the I-cord is like a little bit loose and will kind of roll or like distort a little bit, but I'm going to reserve judgment until I block it. And at the moment I'm just doing some of the increases at the sleeve cap, and I think what I'm going to do is just get it to a little bit more and then give it a block, put it on some try-it-on tubing, and just see whether it's sitting how I want it to. Because I'm still not 100% sold on replacing the ribbing with I-cord, but I do want like that kind of cleaner edge. I guess another option I could do is a folded like stockinette hem, maybe. I don't know if that's something that you've done in a neckline. If anyone has, please let me know. But yeah, I mean, so far the pattern's very clear and I'm enjoying working with this pure silk quite a lot. I think I've heard people say that it's a little squeaky, and definitely on my wooden needles I'm also getting some squeaks kind of, or squeaky feeling a little bit. It's also not quite what I expected. I know that it's like raw, it hasn't been like it hasn't been processed into like a satin fabric or yarn, I guess. But I'm a little surprised at how soft it is. Like it feels a tiny bit like lint, like cotton lint or something. It's just a little bit different to how I expected it to work up. But I am really enjoying it so far, and I'm finding the knitting experience fine. Like, I don't know, no pain or anything like that. I don't know. I've heard some people talk about with inelastic, like cottons and silks, that they find it painful to knit that, but I don't know, maybe it's because it's the small needles, small gauge. I'm finding it fine. Yeah, so this is, the colorway is Dusty Artichoke, which to me kind of reads a little bit more mint. I'm not sure, but it's pretty cute. And yeah, I'm not 100% committed to this pattern, and so, you know, if you want to still see the other contenders, have a look at that other one. But yeah, if this doesn't look nice when I kind of get it blocked and tried on like just the very beginning, then I'll probably still reconsider some of those other options. But yeah, I have no reason to believe that it's not going to look great, I guess. The optimist in me says. Yeah. There's not a ton more to talk about here, I think. It's just something that I've started, and I'm sorry that it's so scrunched up, but it does fit over my head, that I could validate. Okay, and my second work in progress that I'll talk about is my socks, which are also a Florence Miller pattern actually, and that's because I finished one. Ta-da! And my other one is in here, and I actually started it to stop you know, the kind of lack of momentum that you sometimes get when you finish one sock. And I'm not quite halfway down the cuff, I guess. Yeah. So this yarn is, the pattern first is the Mountain Walk Socks by Florence Miller. And the yarn I'm using is one that I picked up at my local yarn store, and I don't know if it has a name, but it has some nettle or rami, I don't know how to pronounce that, in it, and some silk instead of nylon, basically. And then I think it's like 70% wool of, yeah, new wool maybe it was called, but unspecified, the type. And yeah, I think there's not a ton to say. I did this mostly to pattern, but I did modify the toe, and I knit like kind of an anatomical toe. And I did it with quite rapid, like I did a decrease every round on the pinky toe side, and then just added in decreases every round on the big toe side, like 2/3 of the way. And so it's quite a short toe box. I'll put in a little picture of it on my foot, but I think it works quite well for my feet because my big toe is the longest and my toes don't narrow, like my foot just kind of goes like this until my toes end, and then they kind of slope upwards to the big toe. Basically, yeah, this shape is pretty much my foot shape, I think. So this is a lot better for me than the kind of symmetric, like longer toe wedge. The only other thing that I'll mention is that I think that this was my first time doing kind of the gusset and heel flap. Well, I mean, I've done it several times before, but the socks never made it through to see the light of day. Like this one, I just kind of started that process, but it was too small. Anyway, the point is that it's the first time I've finished one of those socks and then blocked it, and I've noticed there's some holes around the top of that gusset, and I'll probably just go back in and like with a tapestry needle and some spare yarn and fill them in on the wrong side with some duplicate stitching. So I'm not too worried about it, but just mentioned that it is something I got. But I was also quite pleased because I was doing this on magic loop, and I thought maybe I'd get either some laddering or some puckering at the kind of transition between the two halves of the stitches, but I can't see anything like that. So yeah, magic loop is definitely my preferred method for socks. I mentioned when I had knit some sleeves 2 at a time recently that I probably want to do my next pair of socks 2 at a time on long cabled magic loop. So that is something I'll probably consider. Another benefit of the magic loop technique. But yeah, these are just tracking along. I think that I have a fair bit of yarn, but I'm expecting to have to tap into one of my 2 half finished socks at some point. So that'll probably be, yeah, it'll make it look very wonky before blocking. I could pre-process the blocked yarn to remove the kinks. So maybe I'll do that depending on how close to finished I am and how impatient I am. But yeah, it's quite funny talking about socks because yeah, you finish one and I don't know whether you talk about all the details then or if you wait until you have both. I'll probably just end up repeating myself when I finish the second sock, but that's probably not going to be for a little while, so you know, don't worry too much. I'm not going to be a broken record. Okay, and then my final work in progress I don't have here to show you, but I'll just insert some footage. Basically, I am planning to sew a pair of pants out of a duvet cover that kind of the ends frayed. And it's this striped linen fabric. I think it's quite heavy and drapey, especially drapey because it's had a lot of wear as a duvet cover. But yeah, I'm planning on sewing the Ethel pants by Style Arc. Actually, any sewists who are watching, I keep seeing it referred to as the Ethel pants in like blog posts and videos, but on the website I could only find the Ethel designer pants. Does anyone know if that's like a modification like of the pattern, or if it's literally just that people don't want to say that full mouthful every time? I would be really curious. Yeah, this is gonna be my first time sewing pants. I did sew the shorts from the Rosery Apparel free tutorial, which was quite nice, the pajama shorts. So I have, I don't know, I figure it's the same thing, just longer, but I'm not totally sure how it's gonna work out because as I mentioned, this fabric's quite kind of drapey. I am thinking I probably want to starch it and press it before I cut my pattern pieces. At the moment, all I've done is cut and tape my pattern out, like it was a printed PDF pattern, so that's my progress so far, although it already feels like it was already an evening of work. But yeah, I think I'd love to probably make the fabric a little bit sturdier to work with, so I'm thinking of starching it. Yeah, so I'm very much not an experienced sewist, but I'll probably just be dabbling a little bit, hopefully. Yeah, and also I will probably just interleave it into the knitting content, but I will always have video chapters, so feel free to just skip the sewing sections if that's not for you. But yeah, as I mentioned, I'm hoping that these will kind of be nice balloony, kind of roomy, drapey linen pants. And I'm hoping to, yeah, wear some of my knit tops with them. I think they'll be quite cute. And yeah, I'm not totally sure how the stripes are gonna look on this pattern, but that's the fabric I have and I do want to use it somehow, so yeah. I'm also quite pleased because I have quite a lot of fabric left over after I'm gonna cut these pieces, so I'm planning on making like a matching, I don't know, camisole or something so that I can have a matching set, because I do think matching sets are like, there's something about them that really draws me in. Like being able to make your own clothes means that you can have matchy anything, whereas I don't know, I feel like matching, like buying a matching set is so extra, but somehow making a matching set, it just makes sense because you have those materials around, like why not use them, you know? Anyway, I think that's all of my works in progress. In terms of plans, I'm definitely most excited about this long sleeve top that I'm going to be making out of the silk. And I definitely want to spend some energy on the sewing project that I'm going to be doing. But I also, like, I've been enjoying the Leela tops so much that I want to make more sleeveless tops, because also the heat has definitely hit here in Switzerland. So I might cast on something else sleeveless, which will probably be, as I mentioned in a previous video, kind of a dupe of the like tie front vest that I saw, but in fingering weight yarn. So that will be probably like a Tolster hack. And the thing that stopped me so far is that I actually went back to get more of this linen yarn, but I wanted it in white, and there were only 2 balls left in the store, and the owner told me that there would be more coming in like a week or 2. So I'll probably go back and see if I can get the yarn to start that project. Yeah, I think that's all from me today. I hope that you had, you know, some nice time to do some knitting or some chores or whatever you were up to. And thank you so much for joining me and listening to my little rambles. Yeah, if you liked this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, click me a comment, and if you're not subscribed, please consider it. Yeah, I think that's everything, and I will catch you, in the next one. Happy knitting, be well.